Whatever you put in front of your camera, it's going to affect your image. That makes lens choice absolutely critical when it's the first thing in front of your camera sensor. And while there are many aspects to lenses, today I want to take a look at what feels like an age-old question: prime or zoom lenses? I'm Matt, and this is Q Time. So when you're choosing a lens for a particular shot, there are so many factors to consider. Each lens will sometimes render colors differently, have different distortion elements, flare more easily, and beyond that, focal length will obviously affect compression and depth of field. The beginning of cinema started with prime lenses because back then, zooms weren't even an option. These days, you can sometimes achieve prime-like quality in a zoom lens. So what's the point of using primes? Let's take a closer look into the different aspects and arguments. The main argument for prime lenses is they tend to have better image results over zoom lenses. This is due to fewer glass elements which create less distortion and chromatic abrasions in your final image. This is usually more important for photography, when your image may be viewed at a 1:1 size for print, but isn't usually as noticeable for HD video. Still, you obviously want to have the best image possible, so investing in good glass is important, especially as camera sensors begin to shoot high resolution. Just because it's a good zoom lens doesn't mean that a prime lens still won't offer better image quality. But how much better is a good question. And for most smaller filmmakers like myself, there's a point of diminishing returns. For example, shooting on a Canon Cinema Zoom for $20,000 or this lens for $1,000 doesn't give me a picture that's $19,000 better than my Tamron for most of my projects. Obviously, given the money and a larger budget, a Canon Cinema Zoom might be a viable option. Prime lenses are also faster than their zoom lens counterparts. A base 50mm Canon Prime has a minimum aperture of f1.8, whereas a Canon 18 to 55mm kit lens goes from f3.5 at 18mm to f5.6 at 55mm. That's a difference of over 3 stops of light, which means you can't achieve as shallow depth of field at 50mm at the kit lens. You'll need to use more light to get the same exposure or boost the camera's ISO settings, which will introduce more noise. The last argument for primes is their size, which are usually smaller and more compact. This saves on weight, which is important if you're using gear such as a gimbal, Steadicam, or a drone. To be honest, for still lenses, this isn't too much of a big deal, as compared to cinema zooms, they are still manageable for a one-man band shooter. But just be aware, more glass is going to equal more weight and a larger size. For something like a 70-200mm lens, it dwarfs my Sony a7S in size and weight. However, zoom lenses are by far the most versatile lenses you can own. With a set of primes, you obviously have set focal lengths of 24, 35, 50, and 85mm for example, whereas with a zoom you can shoot between the full range of 24 to 70mm on this particular lens. Although when I shoot, I often find myself reaching for the prime lens marks anyway. For example, I may decide I want to use 50mm on a particular shot. With my zoom I'll start at 50mm, but may decide that 60mm works slightly better for the shot. I have the option with a zoom, but with a prime, I'd need to own many lenses to have the same options. The classic argument is that using zoom lenses make you lazy, and if you're just starting out in filmmaking, owning primes is a better option to grasp how focal lengths affect the characteristics of your image. But depending on what and how you shoot, zooms are sometimes the better option. Event or news coverage usually calls for zooms due to their flexibility. Even high-end TV series these days sometimes use zoom lenses due to their fast turnaround times. Whereas for many other applications such as narrative cinema work, primes are usually the lens of choice for most DPs. The fact is that good zoom lenses are expensive. In fact, cinema zooms will often start upwards of $15,000 compared to their prime counterparts at around $5,000 for example. But remember, you're basically getting a whole bunch of focal lengths in the one lens at the trade-off of size, weight, and less transmission of light hitting the sensor. The same principle applies for still lenses, just a lower cost involved. If you are buying a zoom lens, look for a constant aperture. That means no matter which end of the zoom range you're at, the same amount of light will come through the lens. This 24 to 70mm has a constant aperture of f2.8, which is fast, but it's 2 stops slower than an f1.4 prime lens, for example. It all comes down to what and how you shoot, which will determine which lens to use. Just remember, choose a focal length based on how it makes the shot look and how it tells the story, not out of convenience. Zooming in doesn't just affect your field of view, it also affects your depth of field and compression. If you're using a zoom lens just because it saves you from moving a tripod, you're generally using it wrong. But which do you prefer? Post your comments down below and subscribe to this channel for more episodes such as this. And as always, we'll see you next time on Q Time.